If you followed Rasmussen reports, you know that we're not sensationalists. We give you the facts and let you make your own conclusions about how newsworthy our polling is. But this one, I can honestly say, is probably the biggest poll we've ever run in our 20 years of business. I'm going to start with a number: 73 million American adults, and I'll tell you what it means after the intro. $73 million Americans. That's how many people say they personally know someone whose death they think may have been caused by the side effects of the COVID-19 vaccine. Here's the question. 28% of American adults, which extrapolates to about 73 million people, say they know someone who they think died from the vaccine. That's absolutely astonishing. The corporate media or Big Pharma might want you thinking that vaccine deaths are in the realm of maybe a few thousand crackpots on a Telegram channel, but the reality is it's a massive and widespread concern for 3 in 10 Americans. Now, we can't directly infer how many people died from the vaccine, but clearly the underlying number is large enough so that well over a quarter of Americans think the vaccine is a killer. If you haven't seen our biggest video of the year, I'll link it at the end, but that shows that on top of this, 41% of vaccinated Americans had a side effect, and 7% of those, or 12 million Americans, suffered a major side effect. I'll bet, even as you watch this, on millions of TVs, pharmaceutical companies are marketing this very same vaccine with no mentions of safety or side effects. So even though polling really can't tell you how many people died from the COVID vaccine, we think these numbers are compelling enough to 1. Further raise questions about vaccine safety, 2. Perhaps break through the mainstream news information blackouts, and 3. Justify more polling on the issue of vaccine safety. After our last video, Steve Kirsch, the founder of the Vaccine Safety Research Foundation, told us that he had an extremely hard time getting, quote, reputable polling companies to touch this topic. Why? By the way, we'll link his foundation in the details. It's really hard to find on Google. So why aren't pollsters asking these questions? Check this out. Morning Consult has now polled about 2.6 million people on COVID since the start of this pandemic. That probably cost between $5 and $10 million. Isn't vaccine safety important enough that they could have tossed a new question set to maybe 1,000 of those people? So let me show you some of the internal data that further supports the horrors of this poll. Let's look at party. Obviously, it's just tinfoil hat Republicans that think they know someone who died from the vaccine, right? Absolutely false. It's actually more Democrats than Republicans, 33% to 26%. Now, this is likely due to the fact that Democrats probably know more vaccinated individuals, or that Democrats tend younger, and younger people are more socially engaged. But clearly, there isn't much in the way of party dogmas at play. In fact, a pretty good chunk of Republicans, 63%, got vaccinated, and a pretty good chunk of Democrats, 14%, didn't. So the parties are more or less in the same boat here. There wasn't much of a difference between gender, race, marital status, income, or any other demographic, which is exactly as you would expect if this was a real signal. But here's age, and again, the results are very troubling. Younger adults are way more likely than older adults to attribute the death of someone they know to the side effects of the vaccine. I can't and won't tell you why that number is higher, but here are some possible explanations. Young people die less, so potentially vaccine deaths are more salient. Younger people are potentially more sensitive to the side effects, especially since the coverage of some of the side effects, like myocarditis, by people like Joe Rogan. And possibly it's because young people are, like I said before, more socially engaged. Think college campuses, maybe they have kids in school. Finally, it could be a propensity for alternative sources of news media. Now, clearly, there are some people that answered this in the affirmative because they have a vaccine axe to grind. That's the problem with public opinion polling. It picks up people's biases. But let's examine something that should give us a feeling of how much bias there is. This is whether people know someone who died, crossed against whether the respondents said they were vaccinated. 22% of vaccinated adults say they know someone they think died from the vaccine, and 45% of unvaccinated adults agreed. Now, there are so many variables that could impact these numbers that I won't get into all of them. Post in the comments if you have your own theories. But here is the important takeaway. The numbers for vaccinated individuals is not 0%, and the number for unvaccinated individuals is not 100%. In fact, the numbers are pretty close, and there are very viable explanations, like potentially a person deciding not to get the vaccine after an acquaintance died from it. Here's another question we asked. How likely is it that the side effects of the COVID-19 vaccines have caused a significant number of unexplained deaths? 49% of American adults say likely, and 28% say very likely. Only 17% say not at all likely. This question may seem similar to the previous one, but it's in fact picking up a very different signal, one that asks them to draw conclusions about how widespread the issue of vaccine deaths is. I don't think I need to tell you that half of Americans saying that it's at least somewhat likely that vaccines are causing a significant number of unexplained deaths is a very scary thing. I really don't know how the pharmaceutical government complex is going to put this cat back in the bag. But here's party. Again, it isn't party dogmas at play. 56% of Republicans say it's at least somewhat likely, as do 51% of Democrats, and pretty much 1/3 of each say it's very likely. Only 23% of Democrats say it's not at all likely. It's actually independents who say it's least likely, but they tend to be more disconnected from the news. 38% of vaccinated individuals say it's at least somewhat likely, and only 23% of them say not at all likely, while 77% of the unvaccinated say it's at least somewhat likely. Before we head into the next question, let me flash a one from last December. How confident are you in the safety and effectiveness of the COVID-19 vaccine? Back then, 75% of American adults were at least somewhat confident that the COVID vaccine was safe and effective, and only 17% were not at all confident. Okay, now check this one out. Which is closer to your belief that there are legitimate reasons to be concerned about the safety of the COVID-19 vaccines, or that people who worry about vaccine safety are spreading conspiracy theories? 48%, a plurality, think there are legitimate reasons to be concerned, and only 37% think people are spreading conspiracy theories. That is a crazy swing year over year. People are waking up to the vaccine safety concerns. But here's party. More of a divide, but still not as much as you would think. 60% of Republicans say there are reasons to be concerned, and 28% say it's conspiracy theories. But let's look at Democrats. Now, last year, 81% of Democrats were at least somewhat confident in the safety and effectiveness of the vaccine, and only 8% were not at all confident. Now, 44% of Democrats say there are legitimate reasons to be concerned, and only 46% say that people are spreading conspiracy theories. If that isn't a crazy shift, I don't know what is. I wonder where Democrats are having their minds changed, because it sure isn't on CNN. Time for a recap. 41%, or 72 million vaccinated adults, say they had at least a minor side effect from the COVID-19 vaccine. 7% of those, or 12 million people, say they've had a major side effect. 28% of adults, or 73 million Americans, say they know someone personally they think died from vaccine side effects. And nearly a majority of Americans, 49%, think it's at least somewhat likely that the vaccines have caused a significant number of unexplained deaths. Finally, 48%, a strong plurality of Americans, think that there are legitimate reasons to be concerned about the safety of the vaccines, including 40% of vaccinated adults, and only 37% of Americans think people are spreading conspiracy theories about vaccine safety. Based on some of our previous polling, people may believe the gaslighting on vaccine effectiveness, or at least mostly Democrats, but people do not believe the vaccines are safe, and they're increasingly concerned. So were we exaggerating, or is this a major news-making poll? We think it's so important that we've made it available to everyone, not just Rasmussen Report's subscribers. So read the story and get the full crosstabs at the links in the details. We're giving this data away free, but if you think it's important, having someone like us, unbeholden to corporations or DC politicians, asking these questions, you can help us in one of a few ways. Please click the thumbs up button so that more people on YouTube will see this video. If you've got someone you know who's skeptical about vaccine safety, you can click the share button and send them the link to the video. This video will be featured on our Twitter feed, so if tormenting the worshippers of scientism is your thing, I bet they'd hate you retweeting our story at them. Also, if you want to follow our future videos, click the subscribe button so you'll be notified when new videos come out. It's free to do it. Finally, if you want to support us financially, please subscribe as a reader at our website. We release new polling every business day, and having paid subscribers helps us make that a reality. Thanks for watching.